All right, Bear Down, part of the Coach Steve show, which means Zach is here. It was hard to come up with something to talk about with Bears or football, but I think we figured it out because not a lot's happening. I looked it up. Practice will be starting here soon as it gets later in July into August. I know football is all year round, but like NFL and college, the two main ones, within a month, will be back into practice. But Zach's here. Since he's been gone, I've upgraded just a handful of things here since he's been gone.
Oh, just a little bit.
New mic cover.
Yep.
Books behind me.
I did see that too.
New camera angle.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. That's it.
Yeah. It's a good looking set. Really putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, for as cheap as I can do it, that's what happens. But the bookshelf was in the what's the now nursery, so I had to get it out, bring it downstairs. That bookshelf is probably 300 pounds, so that's fun.
Well, it looks great.
The books weigh a lot, so that was a lot. But I had to change the camera angle. I was like, you can't see some of it from the old one, so let's just adapt it. When I finally put my foot down and come back down here and start video gaming, this is a better camera angle. So I was just messing around with it.
Yeah, that's good, man.
But
looks good.
But we're here. This is going to be a Joe Rogan style-esque football talk, I suppose. Because I was trying to think about what to talk about with the Bears. There's obviously certain things, but certain things to talk about. You have no truth to it. You have no backing to it. It'd just be all speculation. So stole this idea. I thought about just, the Bears are into their off season now with Ben Johnson. They had their camp a few weeks ago. We talked about that just a hair, but the schedule's out now. We can start speculating a little bit. Reports about who had done well at the camp. There's videos of Caleb Williams out throwing stuff, looking pretty good. The receivers are catching balls with them, which they need to.
Yep.
They're learning Ben Johnson's offense. So I thought about, one side of it's going to be rainbows and flowers. The other side's going to be our pitchforks and fire going on because it's the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for the Bears. So thought that's what we would dive into a little bit, whether it's their schedule, whether it's how Ben Johnson does, how do they react to all that, because I feel like we do this all the time. On paper with the Bears, on paper it always looks good, right? Like we come into every year, for the most part. Last year, kind of thought that, but kind of was leaning, it could go either way. And it went the other way, it kind of went south real quick. But on paper, once again, things are set up for the Bears to be at least competitive for the upcoming season because, of course, with the head coach, and then we had our episode before, we love his coaching staff. He added extra coaches. He said we have to get the Bears to the 21st century and our coaching staff. Videos of their camp. I liked what I've seen from the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
You like what you hear coming from it, how they're being held accountable. Nobody has a starting spot. They have to earn it. He really brought that Lions-esque type of mentality and saying, this is what's going to happen. Defensive coordinator, he's ranked pretty high, all that good stuff. So on paper, it looks good. But as we know with the Bears, on paper, it looks good. And then we get to the season and it's either we start off really bad and we ended up good, or it's we start off good and then we give up a Hail Mary and then everything goes down the toilet. Like it's one or the other. So you can pick which one you personally want to do, best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. So either get your pitchfork out like we've always done or get the flowers out. Either way.
I'll I'll be nice because I don't really care for preseason. For the sake of I don't like overhyping things like this. I know it's like the job of football media to kind of do that, especially like the local guys where it's like, well, everything's great. Here's how we definitely can kick ass, even if we do or don't have things. And I know that's not just me, but like even beyond the Bears, like staff, like writers in different places and the common folks that we see out there that are doing this, um, they're going to be a national darling this year because it's Ben Johnson. The hottest ticket in the coaching sphere the last maybe 3-4 years is finally a head coach, this offensive genius that is going to get his first true crack at being a head coach and taking the, Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions kind of grittiness to Chicago with his finesse of an offense, and they're going to light it up. That's what everyone thinks or is hoping to happen. I say maybe. I mean, I look at the schedule and there's definitely potential. I'll say what I said last year, Steve. I'll do the same thing. This is a wild card team on paper. It was a wild card team last year on paper with the pieces that were put in and with the expectations that were put in. And I look at the schedule and I think, yeah, this is a wild card team. We're going to have a pretty, I think, good test to start the year with 3 straight weeks of playoff caliber teams with Minnesota, Detroit, and Dallas right off the bat. And then you look at the mid part of the schedule as well. Washington, Baltimore, Cincinnati. We get back into stuff like Minnesota again, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Green Bay, 2 of the 3 weeks later in the year. It's actually a pretty rough and rugged setup when the fact that we're taking on the AFC North as our AFC skew this year. We've got Philadelphia and crew on the docket. We got Dallas on the docket with the NFC East as well. The Giants, I think I'll pass over a little bit as kind of a, easier target. But like I look at this, there's not too many cupcake opponents. When you give it the fact that the NFC North is kind of considered one of the best divisions in football right now, yeah, there's going to be tests all over the board. But I'll say what I said last year, and I'll say it again. This is a wild card team on paper, minimum. There's no reason this team can't make the playoffs. And you know what? I could pass up and I could be nice. I could give Ben Johnson the first year treatment. You know what? I don't expect anything. But I'm sorry. The amount of hype this man's been given coming in by so many people and what we've seen as an offensive guru, the hiring of Dennis Allen, the hiring of other coaches on this staff that makes it so veteran. This better be a playoff team year one. I am not even going to hold back. This should be a playoff team. I think it'll be even more disappointing this year than last year of Matt Eberflus if they miss the playoffs with the team they've assembled. And that's looking at the trades, looking at the draft that they picked up, all the offensive weapons, all the revamp on the front line as well. Even the pieces that they added on defense, which I still think is missing that core pass rusher that it needs, which has been a lot of talk on. Should they trade for TJ Watt? Should they trade for Trey Hendrickson? Should they sign Matthew Judon to a deal, or Zadarius Smith? I think they're still missing that piece personally. But beyond that, I'll say what I said, Steve. I'll be a little optimistic, but I'm saying it because I said it again last year. Hell, I think I even kind of hinted at it 2 years ago. This should be a playoff team. If it's not a playoff team, then you see why I continue to be very standoffish in the offseason, because I've heard this story now for so long. I'll look what I see on paper, but that doesn't mean they're going to perform. So, new offense, fine, but I'm going to say it. It should be a playoff team, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be. If it's all the pieces put together, it's a toughish type of schedule for the NFL, but this should be a playoff team if they're going to be able to beat and win against these NFC North opponents.
Yeah, before you hopped on, I had this pulled up and I wrote down a piece of paper of like what realistically should happen, because I was trying to predict what each other team does, which I hate doing so early.
Mm-hmm.
But I either do it now or I do it the week of week one. Either way, and I know preseason we get an idea, but still preseason to me, you can't put stock into that, right?
Grain of salt to that. You're not showing anything. And it's, I'll let you go again after this. It's so devalued anymore. There's nothing for preseason outside of the one half a football game you get type of game anymore. That's one of
Uh,
the 3 weeks.
put a pin in that because I have an idea of what the NFL will go to because you're seeing it more and more. Well, I'll just say it now before I hop into that.
Mhm.
Because you notice preseason now is scaled back to 3 games. I'm not even showing their preseason schedule. It's up here, but I scroll down. I don't even care. Like I
Yeah,
care as a fan
I
because
mean,
it's like
it's Miami, Buffalo, and Kansas City. You're not getting much that's special there.
right, like
I mean, the two high 3 playoff caliber to 2 high marquee teams, but like again, you're not showing anything. You know,
no,
again,
no,
preseason's just basically let's look at our depth. We'll get a few reps in, and that's it. That's it. It's less valuable than it was 10 to 15 years ago.
right, because
That's the simple message.
preseason was used to be 4 games, so you had what a game total of your starters to really see what they're going to do.
Right.
It's made for those guys on the bubble of like, okay, like the roster limit, who you're going to keep. You want to see it on film. Then they
Well, and
scaled it.
I think too the wear and tear discussion's gotten greater in the NFL
Well,
in that time too. So like, should we play certain guys? Let's just focus on making them fresh, and then if there's rough edges in like week 1 and 2, we can iron that out by mid-season, and then we're in our best form by the stretch run going into the playoffs. You know,
right, right. Because I think about it from every other level. Nobody else has preseason. Like high school, we don't have it. College, they don't have it. It's been discussed. I know Syracuse and Colorado talked about playing a preseason game, and NCAA said no. Um, whatever. But like NFL is the only one that does it, and they do it for 2 reasons. One, money, right? People buy
mm-hmm.
tickets. It's on TV. Money. Everything revolves around money. But the other reason why they do it is like we just said, they want to use that for evaluation for your third string quarterback, your this or that of like, let's get this on film and really see what they can do so we make these decisions. But one thing I've noticed over the years, and you see it on Hard Knocks, NFL guys always have like a joint practice. They always go against another team. And we've seen that where like fights break out and stuff. But over the years, I think they're doing more of them. Like they're seeing more than one team in these joint practices. So my gut feeling is that since they added another game to the NFL regular season, the wear and tear discussion, the turf discussion of these injuries that are popping up,
Mm-hmm.
I could see preseason kind of going away, except for maybe one game. And that's kind of where maybe it's one game where you play your starters for just a quarter, get them loose because of these joint practices. Because definitively, you could go to joint practices. Like, I'll give an example in high school right now in Illinois, we're allowed to do joint practices, but
Mm-hmm.
it's very controlled. So you do like 7-on-7, you can do an inside run, but it's never really like full team because you don't want tackling, you don't want injuries. But for us, we're using that as film as evaluation. So let's say we're doing seven, we just had one 2 weeks ago. So if your first part of your 7-on-7 versus this team, you're putting out there who you think is your starters. Then the next time you go out there, you start subbing and telling the kids, you're getting 5 plays. This is your way to show us. So if the NFL is going to if the players keep talking about like how worthless preseason is and everything like that from a play perspective, for their health perspective, maybe the NFL will just scale it back and say, okay, then do it and then leave it up to them. And I could see an NFL team saying, let's go do joint practices. So if you're the Bears, you could find a team you're playing on the schedule. If there's a team you're not playing,
Yep.
um, hey, you want to do a joint practice and we'll film it. Obviously they film it and they could use that as evaluation, going against another team. I could see them even getting refs there and just saying, hey, it's very, very, very controlled. It's, maybe it's, and then maybe make it open to the public, which I think would be awesome for fans. Like, hey, Bears, hey, today we're hosting the Colts today and we're going to have a regular practice. And then at 11 a.m. to noon or 11:45, we're going against them. It's open to the public. Bring them in. They get to watch. It's fun. Um, they'll make money. You have stuff out there to sell. Like, hey, it's free to come in, but we'll have food set up. We'll have merchandise. Or you can buy a special ticket to meet the players after. There's a way that you can get some money, which people will pay for.
They
Like,
will.
um, I would pay to be like, I just want to talk to Ben Johnson for 10 minutes. Like, I want to pay to talk to Ben Johnson. Like, I'll go pay the ticket. I just think that's where they'll scale it back because I had this conversation about college football where they expand this college football playoff gets expanded. It's talked about expanding to 16 teams. And I said, well, what if you're in Ohio State? You make it to the Big Ten championship, you're playing 13 games. Then you got your playoff and you make it all the way to the championship, you're playing an NFL schedule. And then if you get drafted, now you're like it just keeps adding on and on and on. But I digress. That's preseason is kind of whatever. Like I said, it's for money and it's for fans. Like, I mean, me personally, it's on the TV. If a preseason game's on, yeah, I know I'm not invested in it. I'm not
Mhm.
watching every play by play, but it's on in the background. Like, of course, I'll have a Bears preseason game on just to kind of the Hall of Fame game, the very first one. It's always on. I always put it on somewhere, just because we miss that type of football. But I would not be mad if they said, "Hey, you only get one preseason game. We'll televise the joint practice on YouTube or something. I don't care." I would watch it, and then as soon as you start your season, everybody's like, I don't know. There's a better way than this preseason they have. Like, it used to be fun when you're little and you're growing up because it's on. Then as you get older, you're like, this has no impact on my season
Right.
at all.
It's not the same as it used to be. And again, player safety and player wear and tear, it's all going to be more valued. And the NFL, you're talking, they'll find the way to make their money back. A lot of the preseason stuff anyway is more set for the teams and local media to make revenue off of anyhow. It's not really, we know there's a few national broadcasts here or there, but the reality is all the teams are really trying to do with this is they're trying to find an extra bit of gate revenue to bring in. And then they're also trying to kind of appease more to their local media partners in their own municipalities, like how Fox 32 always airs preseason games for the Chicago Bears with the Bears television network, quote unquote, which is really just, their in-house production crew, leading the way is that whole plan. So it's localized. So, but again, you can find ways to get that money back, and joint practices are part of it too. You can have more off-season events if you want. I mean, you name it. There's ways of doing it, and we're talking the future of preseason. I think that's going to be coming soon. The not only do you have NFL player negotiations, those are probably going to start very soon. I'm reading anywhere from next year to like 2028. You should start seeing those sides talk about it more, even though it runs till 2030. But also because there's an out in the NFL's media clause that the NFL can choose to execute on. I think it's in the coming 2 years, I believe, where they can force a renegotiation on the TV rights, which if they wanted the 18th game, they could start that process earlier if there's enough momentum and force that into the discussion.
Right.
So, which then boosts up the revenue for players and also for the league, which then the NFLPA wants to be more focused on, okay, well, we'll get the money, but how do we do it where we consider the safety of our players? Because again, more wear and tear, more opportunities for injury. And that's where I think, like you're talking, you're probably going to see a reduction to, at the very likelihood, 2 preseason games would be the max that you'd see, because that's what they did with the 17. They took one from the preseason last time. I bet they do it again to keep the same amount of games. So you do 2 preseason and then 18 games regular season to be the trade-off, perhaps.
Which, in my opinion, dumb, because I hate this stuff because it's like, how much money is too much money at the end of the day?
Well,
Like,
the NFL, if there's anything about the NFL, and I know, and I think a lot of people would say, is that out of all the professional leagues in the world, or at least minimum minimum of the Americas, but I'll even go as far as saying the world, there is no hungrier a money grabbing organization than the National Football League at trying to find any new way to jump revenues year over year over year. They are hyper aggressive, and I would argue they are one of them that is that way. Maybe the only one I can think that rivals it right now, just off of stuff I watch, is Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
But which when you look at Formula One, would you believe Steve that two U.S. organizations own both the NFL and Formula One?
Oh, really?
Yes, a group called Liberty Media. They bought F1 a few years back. It's one of the reasons why you're seeing F1 everywhere now, because they're being hyper aggressive on monetizing in the US, finding new revenue streams. It's like racing's version of the National Football League and how they year over year look for ways to exponentially grow without stopping.
Yeah, I get it. Like if you're in the NFL, like, hey, we made $2 billion this year. We'd love to make 2.5 billion because then we can do more. We can do whatever. I get it, but to me, there has to be a way to do it where you're just not like basketball. You can play all these games. Baseball, you can play all these games. Football, where it's a collision sport. Now you're adding your 18th game, and I know this is unrealistic, but you have to think about teams. Like if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you're constantly making it to the Super Bowl, and you're playing 18 games and you're playing 2 or 3 games in the playoffs, and you do it 2 years in a row, that's 30 some games like within that time frame, plus your preseason for certain players, not the starters, but you're like, if injuries happen, like you're adding the preseason onto it, you're adding all the practices onto it. It's just at some point you got to say, how else can we make money without adding a game? Like there has to be a way to get another sponsor. I know they're starting to expand overseas. Maybe get a game overseas and get that exposure in one of those 17 games.
I mean, we're already seeing that. That's not stopping anytime soon. They're gonna. I mean, you can tell right now. I mean, we're talking. I mean, it seems like within the next decade or so, there's already talk that we are going to see our first international NFL team, which I can't even comprehend that if I was younger me in like middle school, being like the NFL might have an international division by the time I'm 40. Like that's the type of growth, like that's the type of aggressive growth we're talking about right here. That is crazy to me. But that's also the definition of the Roger Goodell era, because he's been, I think, one of the most, if not the most aggressive commissioner in the league's history in pushing and finding new ways and avenues to grow the business in dollar sense.
Right. I mean, a lot of this is above my pay rate. I just think of it from like a player's perspective.
Which, I mean, you have to consider that if you're the PA, if you have one team, which likely they would try and do 4, to get a division of international. If you're smart, I mean, you got to consider that. How's that all work, too? Travel is going to be a bitch if you're.
Oh God!
If you have even if you do get to 4, it's going to be like at some point, more often than not, you're going to have these teams now traveling across the pond and having these jet lag games and all that. It'll be fun.
Especially if you're going to like California. If you're going to California from
any West Coast stuff, good luck with that.
Like it was when the Big Ten expanded, now they go from West Coast. Even that, I was like, if you're Rutgers and you're traveling all the way to Oregon, like you're gonna have to leave on like a Wednesday to make sure your body's ready to go by even time, like that time zone difference. Imagine going from Europe or Ireland and going to play the LA Rams on a Sunday. You're going to have to leave on Tuesday or Wednesday, find a place to practice, hotel, food, and then travel back. But most likely what would happen is if that were to happen, they would travel, play the LA Rams, and their next game would be somewhere else in the United States. Like, so it becomes a scheduling conflict if you're going international. But then also and that's just from Europe. If you're the LA Rams and now you've got to travel to Germany or wherever they want to put this in there, or the UK, same thing. But now for them, if you only have one team or two teams over there, they have to make sure they play both because you don't want to travel there, turn around, travel back.
No, no, you
Um,
don't.
I mean, I know they'll figure it out, but like for right now, when you think about it, they would have to make sure they get like four teams over there, like right off the bat, because of those travel logistics, to make sure that they're just not traveling there or make sure they have a bye week afterwards. But like that's just a lot with the scheduling. And especially if you add another game onto it, like it just becomes a lot. Which if you add four teams, they're gonna have to add another game, probably. So that's an interesting point I never thought of, is getting them international.
There we go.
Oh, did we both freeze?
I definitely froze. I definitely lost connection over here.
Well, I'll let you know my internet went out 3 hours ago, so who knows what's happening.
Well, I mean, look, when you type in foxsports.com and nothing's coming up and then everything starts spinning on the screen, it's odds are it's my screen that isn't working out. Plus, I can't stay that still. I'm looking at the replay on YouTube right now.
I thought you were just real deep into a text or something. I was like,
No,
oh,
that is like, yeah, I can't even stand still with a text. No way. No.
okay. We're gonna circle back to the Bears.
Yep. Chicago.
Chicago, not the UK or Ireland. We're talking about the city of Chicago. So before you hopped on, I was looking at the schedule and I was trying to be realistic. Like I said, I'm going to do this either now or week one of the season. So at some point, do it, have fun with it. I was just sitting here. Where did it go? Okay. So I was looking at their schedule and I was trying to think in my head. It was real fun. You try to think of the other teams and what they're bringing back and what they're going to look like. I mean, for the Bears, I was sitting here going, man, the first two games, NFC North teams, like right off the bat, and you go with the Vikings and Detroit, and then Cowboys are always a toss up because it's like, are they the Cowboys that score a lot of points, whatever? The Raiders are trying to turn it around a little bit, but still, they're still the Raiders. And then you're going back to Washington for that, Hail Mary stuff. The Saints are struggling. Baltimore's tough. Cincinnati just kind of depends if their O line wants to block or not, and all that stuff. The Giants are terrible. Then you got to go to Minnesota, which is tough. Steelers are always tough. Now they have Aaron Rodgers and all that stuff. Philadelphia Super Bowl champs. Then you go to Green Bay, which is amazing how they did this. Green Bay Browns, Green Bay again. Like there's no real break there. San Francisco and the Lions. And so, like, it's tough because you're like, is San Francisco reeling a little bit? Are they going to be the same as they have been? The Browns, Shador Sanders, all that BS talk. What are they going to look like? So, I mean, when I was looking at the schedule as a whole, I was like, oh, on paper, with the Bears coaching staff, the players, I know we're missing some on defense, but hopefully you can out scheme that a little bit, and hopefully the offense, puts them in better positions as well. The schedule is set up favorably compared to what the other teams are doing. To best case scenario here, I said 8 to 10 wins, somewhere in there, to 11 wins even. But that 10-11 win mark hopefully gets you, or a 9-win mark gets you a wild card. So I'm sitting here going, best case scenario, year one under Ben Johnson, because as we know, hopefully as the season progresses, they get more comfortable in the system. They understand how he's coaching. All this stuff starts to kind of click, that the best case scenario is going to be wild card playoff. I'm not going to sit here and tell you NFC North Championship. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this, or that. As we get into the season, we can start having those conversations. But I'm telling you, I was marking this up. And if things go the way they should, I was counting those. There's a lot of W's written here for me. And it's almost splitting it with the NFC North, because The Vikings have a quarterback discussion they have to have, but they still have a defense.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit has some question marks. They're trying to replace some offensive linemen. They're trying to do this. Their offensive coordinator's gone, but you still have the man, right? So I could see them splitting with Detroit. I'm not saying they would beat them twice. You split there. Green Bay, that's going to be interesting because of what Ben Johnson said in his interview about Matt LaFleur. Like, hopefully by then the Bears are walking the walk and talking the talk to where they could beat Green Bay, split that. You're hoping San Francisco is kind of reeling because the conversations about even their head coach, all the injuries they have, all the like whatever. So it is set up, in my opinion, for a wild card spot. And if they have a wild card berth, to me, that's a successful season under Ben Johnson, like you said. So that's one of my good scenarios, in my opinion, is wild card, and the schedule is set up good enough, in my opinion, to get you to that point. But in order to get to that point, you cannot slip up versus the Saints of the world, the Giants of the world, the Browns, like those type of games. You cannot slip up at all. I think we're all okay if we lose to the Lions once, the Vikings once, like we get over it. But those other games, you cannot slip up. And then you got to steal one. Where do they steal one? Is it Washington, who was a good team last year? Is that stealing it? Do you steal one with the Steelers? Do you steal two against an NFC North opponent? Like somewhere in there, they got to steal. So on paper, I'm saying best case scenario is that the people out there saying Super Bowl and we're going to win the NFC North, like those are the people that are reading the paper and that's what they're seeing. Yeah, would that be awesome? Of course it would. We'd be jumping up and down, whatever. But best case scenario has to be wild card berth. And that's a lot of pressure. First year head coach, you better make the playoffs. But people got to remember the amount of money they just pumped into this coaching staff. They're under a lot of pressure too. Ben Johnson's going to be under a lot of pressure. They're paying him $13 million a year or whatever it is. A lot of pressure. Wild card spot. That's one of my good scenarios.
Yep.
As well.
Oh yeah.
Now that's that world. The other scenario I had is, would people still grab their pitchforks? Let's say to be a wild card team, they have to win 11 games. Okay, let's just throw that. Let's say 10 games. Let's say 10 games, they get a wild card spot. Let's say the Bears win 9 games this year, but they don't get into the playoffs. Is that still a good scenario? Now, we both just sat here and had our talk about, no, that's not going to be it. But from where we were these past couple years with Matt Eberflus and everything, that's still showing growth from where we were. So, would we all sit here and say, okay, we won 9 games. This just happened to be a year where we needed 10, 11 to get into that wild card spot. Let's just say, is that still a good scenario to win 8 or 9 games from where we just came from?
Yeah, but I need that's where it's going to come down to context for me. Were we right at the doorstep? Were we tangibly right in the thick of it till the end and just needed a piece or two on one side of the ball or something like that? Was it not a coaching flub type of thing, but more of we just needed talent type of thing? That's where I'll be a little more soft. I have no patience this year, and I usually am lenient on year one coaches, but I'm going to give no patience this year because of the investments they're making in this coaching staff and what is being promised about this coaching staff and what's being talked about with this coaching staff this offseason. I have no patience for this year with that regard. So I'm going to say if it's anything related to coaching where we're seeing stuff like within the Nagy and Eberflus era sphere of just incompetence in terms of game management, I'm going to probably not even try to do gymnastics. I mean, I'm not going to do gymnastics anyway. I'm hardline performing, just win games, baby. That's it.
Mhm.
And if there's any hint that it's coaching incompetence, I'm going to lose my shit because of how much they have pumped this staff up so much to be like, this is going to be it. Like, that's the thing. 9-8, sure. But it's got to be a performance thing for me to be like not questioning what happened this past year. If we just missed the playoffs, Also, I mean, it'll be critiqued either way, but Caleb Williams will be on the radar. If for any reason he looks shoddy this year, I'll be a little more passive on that year one Ben Johnson offense. But I mean, keep the turnovers down, get better at your deep ball, and reading those situations and being efficient. And my key this year in particular is play 4 quarters more consistently. Don't get cold for halves and then get hot. That's a Caleb problem that was on the offense last year. I expect more consistent play right out the gate this season.
Right.
So if I see the same pattern again, I'm going to be a little more antsy and a little more irritated by the end of the year too.
Now, I have something else to say, but to play devil's advocate to that,
Mm-hmm.
would you be okay? And because I think of this from a fan perspective and as a coach, because I'm not an NFL coach by any stretch, but doing this 16 years, I have to think about it from both sides. You're talking about hot and cold. Let's say up until the bye week, right? We did this last year. Like if we can go 2-2 into the bye week, we can go wherever into the bye week. There's going to be some bumps at the beginning because of how they're being coached with this new stuff. Ben Johnson, as much as we love him being there, he's saying the right things, he's working hard, he's doing the right things. He doesn't have a magic wand. Nobody has a magic wand to where it's like that
Oh,
very first
sure.
game. That very first game, boop, like here we go. We just scored 40 some points. We only gave up 20. Boop, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next game, boop, here we go. And it could be that first game we look awesome against the Vikings because it's the first game. Because Ben Johnson said, you might see some things I ran with the Lions. We're going to do something else. He straight up said, like, I have different players. So it's like, so for the Vikings, they're going to have no film on like what they have the Lions film, but it can look completely different. The Bears have Vikings defensive film of them last year with the same defense coordinator. So they have an idea of, so that first game, we could look great. But then as now they start getting film on Ben Johnson, what I'm trying to get at is what if at the beginning of the season, there's hot and cold moments because of learning this defense, learning this offense, and there's going to be those bumps, right? How off the train would you be or fans be if that happened? But then as the season went on, now let's say during those stretches, there was no coaching blunders, there was no misuse of a timeout, there was no whatever. It was just straight up, you could just tell the players are outmatched with this or that. You could just tell that it just wasn't their day. But as the season progresses, right, you start to see a little more competency. Are we okay with a slow start? And then as it goes, we start to see it more and more.
Well, I think you should be a little more open-minded at the beginning of the year. NFL seasons are a long journey and they go in ebbs and flows. Some start out slow, others start out really hot. The first third of the year, I don't think you truly know what a team's going to look like. I think by 3/4, by 3/4 or 2/3 or something along that into the year, say like 10, 11 games in, you're going to know what you're getting. Okay. And that comes down to injury. That comes down to coaching, comes down to roster adjustment. I mean, there's a lot of factors. Some teams already have those rosters that are pretty well built out and they're playoff ready, and hopefully their season's going to keep going off without a hitch. Some get derailed due to injury. Some get derailed due to just, acts of God, if you will. I mean, you never know. First part of the year, I got to take it with a grain of salt. 5-6 games in, I'll give a little leeway. It's fine. still filling it out. But once we past that double digit mark in games, you kind of know what you're going to get. You know, there's not like you can improve over that time, but there's not going to be after that like leaps and bounds in growth in a season or how a season makes your team get better after that. To me, I mean, maybe a playoff push would help that edge. So you're hoping by then that Chicago's not out of the woods or anything like that, which this team shouldn't be. There's no reason. Again, I highly stress there is no reason this team should not be anywhere missing a playoff push. They should be in the conversation all year. If by week 10 that they're close to or already out, yeah, I mean, I've lost faith. Okay, I'll have already lost faith. So,
Right.
I got leeway. I don't instantly knock down after a game or two, but like I do see the writing on the wall once you get like a little bit past that, like just past that halfway point. You're on the final stretch in like December and late November, like at
Right.
that point, you know.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna circle back. So I get you did too. I think the most perfect scenario was playoff. My other good scenario for myself, if they win 8 or 9 games and they don't
Mm-hmm.
make the playoffs, just from hearing that, you go, this is a success because you look at our past since 2020, we've gone 6-11, 3-14, 7-10, 5-12. So you get to that 8 or 9 win mark right off the bat, you're like, this is a good scenario because you go
Mm-hmm.
from 5 wins with incompetent coaching and everything else. Now you get to 8 or 9, right? Because NFC North is still a tough division. It's, and you got all this stuff. But like you said, then you got to scale the onion back a little bit. In those 8 or 9 wins, did we lose on a last second march down the field to kick a field goal and win the game? But you were right there, right? It was competitive. You're doing the things you need to do. The other team just had it. We
Yeah.
don't see a Thanksgiving game where we don't use the timeouts.
Mm-hmm.
All that type of stuff. If we see though, and what I look for, I'm looking for competitiveness. I'm looking for competency from players and coaches, right? Because ultimately we're there to watch the players, right? Like we're not like, yeah, you want to see Ben Johnson coach, but we want to see the players play. But if we see that they're in good positions, we see this. If it's a drop pass here, whatever here, but if those type of things, and we're going 8 and 9, you have to sit there and go, okay, the next year, now we're really making that push because we're seeing the turn, and that's why if we see bumps in the road at the beginning, and they drop a couple games, but then you're like I said, in that 8 to 9 win mark, if you're in that conversation with the playoffs, even though we don't make it, and you're right there with a sophomore quarterback, with a new offense, with different offensive linemen, different pieces put in place, you're still missing a couple pieces from the defense. If you're like, hey, we're one defensive lineman and one linebacker away from making these plays or doing this or doing that, to me, that's also a very high good scenario. Yeah, it sucks. You didn't make the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
but it's way better than where we've been, right? It can't be this quick turnaround where, yes, I'm expecting playoffs, wild card playoffs, mind you. I'm expecting that. But I also have to take a step back and say another fantastic scenario is a competent 8 and 9, eight or
That's
nine
fine.
wins.
That's fine. That's the most leeway I'll give, and I'll live with that. Again, it's gotta. I need to see growth. I also need to see that. Again, you have a staff that, I know Ben Johnson's never been a head coach, but he's going to be a play calling head coach. You have two veteran, very well versed coordinators that are based.
Mhm.
That one has been a former head coach twice. One is currently being a head coach. I mean, again, like this is a staff that there's no newness to this. There's no to me. There's very little gamble here on what is inexperience or taking shots on guys that don't know this scene in the NFL. I mean, Eric Bieniemy's on this staff too. He has tons of exposure at being a play caller and also being in one of the best head coaching, or one of the best coaching scenarios in the league with Andy Reid for years. I mean, the leeway is razor thin. And it really should be for everybody. You know, competency is all I want to see. No Matt Eberflus stuff this year. And if we finish just missing the playoffs, that's like my bare bones, that's it type of thing for me, where I'm not going to like be completely off the rails. But you know, just how it is. I mean, you spend all this money on a guy like Ben Johnson, and you pick up a high profile guy like Dennis Allen, and you get Eric Bieniemy, and you get the staff that has so much talent behind it, and that you're pulling from Detroit as well, that you're taking with you while you leave Detroit. I mean, there is very little I can excuse on a first year basis. It's like it's one of the most ready, I think, first year coaching tenures I've ever seen in terms of like on paper staff.
Because this isn't Matt Nagy's first year where we knew things were
Oh no.
scaled.
No.
Like
I mean,
I remember you and
yeah.
because Zach, I thought about this. You and I have been doing this for a couple of years now, which
Mhm.
is shocking. It doesn't seem like it, but I remember we were both like, "Hey, we don't really have expectations for the season." Like we kind of did it. We kind of said, best case scenario is this. So we kind of done this without even doing it before,
Yep.
but that was literally skin and bones team, right? Like I think we were lucky enough to have a full roster. Like they really scaled it back and all the money that they weren't spending because they were looking towards, building it. And we've had those conversations, but I mean, we thought Caleb Williams, that's a great first round pick to be in that situation. And it didn't go the way we thought, but still, even then, like, still a good situation for him. And this is a fantastic situation for first year head coach, first year staff together. Um, and we've had those conversations about we like the pieces they've picked up. They're just missing a couple, but now it comes down to those guys performing and coaching. So I think we're on the same page with our two scenarios. Like for me, those two scenarios, it would be a successful season, in my opinion. Those would be you're like, okay, we're like we could take a deep breath and be like, okay, we're seeing it. We're seeing what Kevin Warren and company are envisioning, what Ben Johnson's envisioning, what the staff is. Now, let's get the pitchforks out. Let's get the fire started. Let's talk about worst case scenarios that whether could happen, we play in the what if world, or realistically, what could we see happening as a worst case scenario? Um, Worst case scenario for me is like we just said, we kind of said it. We win 5 or 6 games again, right? To me,
Sure.
that's a huge worst case scenario.
Sure thing.
And we're seeing incompetence from players and the coaching staff, right? And so, worst case scenario in that world that I'm living in, it's tough for a head coach to call plays, especially in the NFL. Only a handful have ever done it. And like Andy Reid does it, Kyle Shanahan does it, John Gruden did it. But realistically, like when you're seeing these things, head coaches really don't call things. They don't because they have to manage everything else. Like Dan Campbell doesn't call anything. Mike Tomlin doesn't call anything. Um, very, very rarely do these coaches, even in the college world, like Nick Saban didn't call plays. Um, Dabo Sweeney doesn't call plays. Kirby Smart doesn't call plays. He's heavily involved in the defense and
Mm-hmm.
he's heavily involved in the offense, but he doesn't call it. He gives his opinions. So, worst case scenario is they only win 3 to 5, 6 games. And the Ben Johnson calling plays while trying to manage everything falls apart. Like that, like if we could just tell that him trying to manage everything and worry about calling plays. Because the OC he hired, his job is to not call plays. His job is to study film. His job is
Mm-hmm.
to get the game sheet ready. His job is to do all the other stuff. Because Ben Johnson's got to do a whole bunch of other stuff. Worst case scenario is that play calling doesn't work out and he hands it off to somebody. He hands it off to the guy he hired as OC, and it's not the same. It's not the same as Ben Johnson doing it. That's a very bad worst case scenario because I'm going to repeat it. It's super hard to be a head coach and call plays while also managing the entire rest of what's going on, especially in this type of situation where there are high expectations and you need to meet those. And again, I want to end it. I want to end that point by saying this. I'm not saying Ben Johnson's going to do terrible. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that. I'm not accusing anything. We're just living in this world where that could happen. That could be a realistic thing where him calling plays and managing costs some things. Then if they try to switch play callers halfway through where he says, "Hey, I'm going to be a head coach. I'm going to take a step back," and you're trying somebody else to do it now, well, that's a different voice. Like, Zach, we could both have the exact same play sheet. Like, you could be in my offense. I'm an OC now. You could be in the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both have the same play sheet, but you're going to call a different style of game. You're going to pass more. You're going to run more. You're going to do this. You're going to do more play action. I'm going to do stuff different. I might motion more. You might not motion much. You might not do this. It's just a different voice, especially with a sophomore quarterback that realistically, I don't see it happening. I'm like 90% sure it's not going to happen because Ben Johnson learned so much from Dan Campbell, and he probably will let other guys handle some things. And that's why he has former head coaches on staff to help this.
Yep.
But we're going to live in this world for a second. That could happen. And that's a really bad scenario to happen with this team and the staff you've assembled.
Yeah. I, though, see a near zero chance he gives up play calling. And my theory is I think the attitude and the persona he's given off is that he's going to be a guy that's going to try and make it work till the bitter end if it goes bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him giving up play calling any chance this year, even if nothing's working. Caleb Williams is not delivering, or they're trying to make it work and they feel like it could be something on him. I see no way. And I think that's where you're going to live or die is, he'll do the calls, but will he be good enough at doing the coaching items that we expect, and just being able to manage a game properly is what I'm more concerned about. If his play calling doesn't work out, well, yeah, we should definitely have a conversation. I can't see him giving that up. Mm-hmm. Maybe going to an off season, they'll have some questions about it and maybe he sits on it. I don't see him giving it up, but there's a lot of that pressure to perform. And I think he'll stave it off first year to do so, and I think the Bears will stave it off first year to do so because they put so much financially into him and his staff that he built around him. So I don't think that happens. My worst case though is like I said, if we see anything like last two head coaches with kind of incompetent game management would be part of the deal. I think with what is a weakened Detroit, where you have a staff that's been completely gutted by two coordinators leaving, an offensive line that is aged a little bit and has had, key pieces leave as well. And along with the fact that you have a Minnesota that, has essentially a rookie quarterback in this year compared to Sam Darnold, with the same crew. This to me would be a disaster if you can't be at least competing for that top spot. So I'll add on that another part of this is they somehow find a way to finish last in the division again. Hell, I'll be even bullish and cocky, which, me, I don't like being cocky with the Bears teams whatsoever. But I'll be cocky at everyone claims that Green Bay's this god awful team now. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we're gonna sweep them this year because apparently everyone thinks we are just that above now. After a season of getting that one win at the end of the year last year, we're gonna sweep them, Steve. I'm just gonna put it into play right now. We're gonna sweep Green Bay. I'll let my delusional self leak out. We'll beat Green Bay twice this season. Why not? Even in the worst case scenario, we'll get a split. We won't lose either. We won't lose both. That's what I'll go with. Worst case scenario, we lose one to Green Bay. Best case scenario, we sweep them. And we lose one game in the division this year, which my prediction will be to Detroit. We sweep Minnesota in the best case scenario. Mm-hmm. Worst case, we lose 5 of the 6 games in the division this year. And then we somehow find a way to lose to Cleveland and Las Vegas.
Mhm.
I don't think we lose New Orleans. They're a team that's rebuilding. I don't have faith they're going to be able to beat us either way. I digress. And then the rest of the schedule, I'd say, we get our 5 wins on kind of the easier opponents, and maybe we steal one from like Pittsburgh, because I'm not fully sold that Pittsburgh's going to be better than 9-8, 10-7 with Aaron Rodgers in his allegedly retirement year.
Mhm.
So, yeah, worst case scenario, we finish 5-12 or somehow worse. I'll still not be happy if we finish below 8 wins. So that's my threshold of, okay, this is starting to get very disappointing, is if we somehow finish 7-10 or worse.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but yeah, all the chips, I'm kind of done trying to, be, same old, because everyone assumes we're just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, this is the year again. So why not? I'll let my delusional side leak. I got a few weeks to let that happen.
Mhm.
We'll do it. We're gonna finish 5-1 division record, because I don't see us sweeping Detroit, but I think we'll finish 5-1 win with a division win record, and we'll fight for Detroit for the top divisional seed. And I think we won't win the division, but we'll at least get that wild card spot or just miss.
Mhm.
That's my prediction this year.
Mhm.
So, but
Well,
yeah,
I
got at least kind of be preseason me, I guess. Why not? I got nothing to lose. No money put in. I'm playing with house money right now, Steve. I got 2 months to play with house money.
Well, that's why we're here. That like we can live in that world. This is about living in
Yeah.
worlds.
Yeah,
Because
let's celebrate, man. We're
well,
gonna win the damn Super Bowl. What about that? Let's do
well,
it.
let me be a Deborah Downer here and tell you my other worst case scenario. My other worst case scenario is that Caleb Williams just sucks it up.
Well, now that's everyone's fear. If you imagine you bring in a guy, you bring in who is now one of the top 10 most expensive coaches in the league, by the way, already labeled offensive guru, and one of, if not the best offensive play caller in the league, by the way, by national media sources. Then you would have your star quarterback, who was pretty good with turnover ratio last year, comes in, has had plenty to say in the offseason, apparently, about the pass regime, about his relationship with Ben Johnson, about how this team looks, and then he lays a complete egg. Again, reminder, he's one of the key sources in a Sam Wickersham, basically right up on the Bears and novel, where he's quoted as saying, hey, the pass regime kind of just let me watch film by myself. Pretty much failed me.
That's
Just a lot of pressure riding there for a guy that said a lot of stuff.
that could be our next podcast topic, is full on Caleb Williams expectations. But yeah, my other worst case scenario, and this could be a hint to that episode. Who knows? But that's my next thing, is that not a lot of other Bears are talking smack, but Caleb Williams is a little bit.
I was actually
Like,
surprised Cole Kmet's been quiet, but I think he realizes, though, I think for Cole's sake, he realizes he's very overpaid and has legitimate competition at the tight end scene, even though they can get targets both. One is definitely getting overpaid right now by the production standards. So,
well, Ben, I think Cole Kmet's been put on notice. If any of those reports are true about Ben Johnson really getting on him, regardless of what he said, I could never find what I read before, but regardless of what the words were, if he's on him.
I mean, Cole's kind of got a mouth on him if you read up stuff about the Bears in recent years. He kind of likes to talk. He just, it's just, you don't really know that unless you're a Bears fan.
Right. And that's the thing with Ben Johnson that I've got the vibe from, is that one thing he's brought, because correct me if I'm wrong, Lions players didn't really talk any smack until Ben Johnson left, and you have now then they were talking smack about him, like, "Oh, why you go to the Bears?" But before that, I don't think they really talked smack. I think they just fed off of Dan Campbell and said, "We show up and play. Like that's our job is to show up and play." And I think that the Bears kind of were allowed to do whatever and say certain things, and Ben Johnson and company are putting that like, "We can't do that. We
Mhm.
can't do that." So that's why I think Cole Kmet's been quiet because he's probably been put on notice, like, "Hey, we drafted a tight end." If you didn't see, like, "Hey, we drafted a tight end. Your production has not been what it should be with what your
Y
contract is."
Say, "You'll help us this year with us having 2 starters, but, just realize, buddy, we can move on from you if you
Yes,
don't perform again."
so I think the first time he was put on notice was when they drafted a tight end, and if reports are true that Ben Johnson is really on him, maybe he's that and maybe and, like, we always say this, young kids and young players, they want to be coached like that. They want discipline, they just don't show it. Even
Mhm.
as professionals, they want it, and hopefully that's what staff has brought, but worst case scenario is that Caleb Williams comes out and just lays an egg, right? Because the whole watching film thing I have opinions on, like, you should kinda know how to watch film because you should have done it in college,
Well,
and
and it hasn't gone away either. They even asked, Matt Eberflus about it. Apparently Shane Waldron behind the scenes has, been very upset about those comments being made that blunt in that novel. So, you know, kind of stirred the pot. Like a lot of the offseason content for some of has really been about his like experience last year.
yeah. So my worst case scenario is that Caleb Williams just comes out and just doesn't perform the way that we're thinking that he should with
Mhm.
Ben Johnson there, because we could talk about he didn't turn the ball over, but he also didn't take that many chances either throwing the ball. Now, so we have to pick our poison. Do we want him to turn the ball over or do we want him to see taking chances? And I think Ben Johnson's going to force him to take chances because, like with even with Jared Goff, they took the Sean Payton approach where it's take 2 deep shots a quarter at least. So that way you're proving that, hey, we are going to try to take a deep shot throw to a receiver and just put you on notice that if you leave it, like if we see it open, we're going to take it. So if Caleb Williams comes out and if everything else is going right, and what I mean by that is like, let's say defense plays well, O line, like the sacks are down, the O line's playing well. But if Caleb Williams is out there trying to make plays with his feet, he pulls a Justin Fields,
Mhm.
he's being too conservative, they're doing this, or he is turning the ball over a lot, or whatever. Maybe they are in a situation where they're the team that has to march down the field and either score a touchdown or kick a field goal, and he's just not performing. Worst case scenario is that he has to get benched, and then it's Tyson or it's Keenum in there. And because me personally, I'm okay if Ben Johnson puts Caleb Williams on notice, even like, hey, we have Chase Keenum here, who's a veteran and has seen this and done that. If you don't perform well, I will put him in. I will put
It,
somebody else in.
it'll be telling who wins that backup battle. You
Yeah.
know, I think for the sake of how much Ben trusts Caleb to not to and all the QBs will be on there, but I think you know who he trusts in terms of like say I want you know offensive production or second guy, you know, worst case scenario. I mean, we're talking a Case Keenum that came out of retirement for God's sake, or was really talked out of retirement to come to Chicago
Yeah.
versus
Ben
a Tyson
Johnson.
Bagent who's been, for a few years now been considered a pretty solid backup that has shown flashes of a guy that could start in the NFL somewhere if
Hmm.
need be, you know?
Yeah. So that's kind of my other worst case scenario is Caleb Williams just lays an egg and just consistently doesn't perform well. Like if he has a shining moment, Justin Fields had shining moments. Like, it's
Mhm.
the consistency of playing better. Now, there's always going to be that sophomore slump, but with the expectations, with certain comments that he has made, you better perform. And I have the feeling that Ben Johnson and staff will give him a shot, obviously, because number one pick, he's getting paid, he's supposed to be the face. If he doesn't perform well and he doesn't do certain things well, and like you said, if Ben Johnson has that attitude of like play calling till the wheels fall off and I'm still going to
Mhm.
do it, they'll they'll replace him. They'll pull him out and say, you know what,
Oh,
until you get it right.
most definitely if that's true. If he's going to be a guy that's not wanting to give up duties,
Mhm.
you're just going to see stuff trying to get fixed all everywhere. If it's the worst case scenario stuff we're
Right.
talking.
So that's my two best case and my two worst cases of this season. Now, obviously, it could go really off the rails and just Bear's gonna bear, right? But
Mhm.
and surprisingly, my worst case scenario is not that the offensive line does exactly what it was doing because I have faith in the pieces they put in there and a new coach and new ways that the offensive line is going to take a jump. Which is shocking because normally I'd sit here and say, "Oh, worst case scenario is the offensive line doesn't get better," but I don't have that feeling that that's what's going to be the problem this year.
No. No. I don't have I mean, if there's line issues, it better be because they're ravaged from injury or uh actually really that's it. I'm hoping it's just that. Anything else like performance wise, that's a massive issue for how much you invested in this off season to get guys in, you know.
Right.
Th- Thuney, I'm glad they signed him on. Imagine he'll be staying consistent. And again, they have really built up their interior and have built up and have options to compete on the outside edges for tackle. So there shouldn't be any excuse really. Like again, you have a good line. I mean, they went into what they did in Detroit. They built up the line really quick. You know, they gave their QB who has stated and I think has shown he wants to be a pocket passer first. You
Hmm.
know, he can run, but he clearly has stated in press conferences and in his own play, he's shown he wants to be a pocket guy. He doesn't want to be the Justin Fields leave at the first sign of trouble or take the safe conservative throw. You know, he wants to be able to make explosive plays in the pocket. So
Hmm.
they did that and gave him protection. Now, can they deliver and keep these guys healthy? And can these guys not fall off? I think they won't. That's just
Right.
it.
Right. But yeah, that's my best and worst cases, which I think is an improvement from where we were with the
Yeah.
Bears
Yeah.
because I think our worst case scenarios would have outshined everything like this. And it wouldn't be scenarios, it'd be what is going to happen. Like, this is going to happen
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
compared, compared to what has been going on. Um, but it's fun because we're getting closer to the season. Um, I think all Bears fans are kind of excited to see what they're going to look like. I think that's what we're all like. We're a little antsy of like, what are we really going to look like? Like, because Ben Johnson was very clear that obviously you'll see some things that he did in Detroit, but he even told us or us, like he said, every year in Detroit, I had to change things because we get new players. These defense coordinators do new things. So for people that are trying, like, I kind of want to watch Lions film and kind of see, but even then, if I watch it, I have to know like we're not going to do some of those things, right? Like, I actually think we have a similar offensive line now, but it's not going to be the same. It can't be. It's not going to. I think he'll be very good at he and his offensive staff leaning into of what talents do we have on this side of the ball? Are we a gap scheme type of offensive line? Cool. That's what
Mhm.
we're going to do because that's what they can do and sprinkle in some other things. Are they more of a team that double teams and moves people vertically? Okay, we got to go a little bit zone, but we are going to sprinkle in. So, like, I think he'll be very good at that
Mhm.
from his time at Detroit. And the thing with that people have to remember, Ben Johnson did learn some things from other people, but Dan Campbell like reported like, "Hey, Ben Johnson, you are going to create this. Like, I'll be there to help you. The offensive staff's there to help you, but you're going to create this from scratch. This is yours." And so I'm just super interested to see what kind of offense are we going to be? What's it going to look like? And just excited to see if it's competent offense of what we saw from Shane Waldron and everything else. Because we started looking more competent after he left, but obviously we know the story. But like it just kind of fell off the rails, and
Mhm.
handed off play calling twice is not the right thing to do to a team. So if it's the same voice, even if the players aren't performing well, but Ben Johnson's going to ride it till the wheels fall off. Because one thing I forgot to say is from a coach, when you look at it, the answer I gave you was kind of like a fan perspective. I'm going to give you quickly a coach perspective of how you look at this.
Sure.
They won 5 games last year. If you win 6, 7 games, you don't go to the playoffs. They're not going to look at that as a success necessarily because we're competitive creatures, and we're going to sit there and say as a coach, "Oh, we should have done this." But you have to look at it from a culture building perspective. You have to look at it from a team building perspective, organization of this. So if they don't make the playoffs, they win 6, 7 games. Us as fans are going to have our pitchforks. We're going to be super upset because this was supposed to happen. Like we were supposed to do this. But when you're from a coach, if you're seeing any type of growth that the fan doesn't see, right? Like you're the one at practice, you're the one in the film room, you're the one on the sideline. If you're seeing things to where you go, next year's the year. Like this is our bumps right here, winning 6 games. Like you're going to be upset. I'm going to be upset. But as a coaching staff, if they're sitting there going, "Hey, we won 6 games, we didn't make the playoffs, but this allowed us to see what we're going to have to get in the offseason. Is it quarterback play? Like he's just not the dude, or like we got to get something, or linebackers, or Swift is not the running back we need. We need to get this running, whatever it is." And they address those now. Now they can really fix it in this offseason. And if the Bears spend money again, because now the Bears now that the management put their foot into the spending money, they can't
Mhm.
go backwards. There is no, "Hey, you've just now proven you have the money to spend. So if you try to go backwards, fans and everybody else is going to be upset." So from a coach perspective, for them, you know, success is getting to the playoffs, doing all that stuff. It's if you win 7, 8 games, like we said, but you're seeing the growth. So in their minds, if it's still 6 games, but they're seeing what they need to see, to them, they're going to say, "Okay, then next year we got to fix it," because Dan Campbell did it. Remember, he got there, he had to build it from the ground up. He had to do
Yep.
certain things. People even talked about getting rid of him at one point because they were like, "Oh, it's just the same Lions," but it's a process. And I think we're losing sight of that because everybody is instant gratification. I'm instant gratification on certain things. I'm sure you are. Like, I would love things to be done. Like, I want it now. I want this now. And but the kids and players are definitely like that. The fans are like that. And in college football with the transfer portal, it's fed over because now in college football, it's you have to get the best team right now and win right now. Where college football used to be, give that head coach 5 years because he's got to recruit, he's got to get the culture. In the NFL, where they have these contracts, it, it's still like that, where they need time. Bill Belichick, even like I know, but he had to build that. Pete Carroll had to build, like people have to
Mhm.
build it up. So from a coach perspective, if they win 6 games, 7 games, not even sniffing the playoffs, they weren't in the conversation. Behind closed doors, are going to be pissed off. But if they're seeing progress where they need to see it and understand what they have to get it done and understand where they are, to them, that's still part success, if this makes sense. Where now, obviously, worst case scenario is incompetent coaching, incompetent clock management, incompetent player play.
Yeah.
But if they're managing the clock well, they're in decent situations, they just can't pull it out. They only win 6, 7 games. As fans, we're going to be pissed. But from a coach side, because I've been a part of that, where you go, now we really understand what has to get done. We've been in it for a year. You go to Kevin Warren and company and say, the next 2 years, this is what we need to do. And if we do this and we're consistent with it, we will be a team that competes year in and year out. So if we see that, we hear that from Ben Johnson and company, that's still a success, quote unquote, part of your season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been a part of it. At the school I'm at now, we went 1-5 in the COVID season. That's spring. Then we go 0-9 in the fall, and we're like, what in the world is going on? We're trying, like, what are we doing? Then we go 2-7. But in that 2-7 season, we sat back as coaches and said, we gave some games away. Like, we were right there, but these plays that were made, like, were very close. And then the next year we go 6-3, and we're like, okay, now it's about, can we do it again? Then we went 7-2. So now we're really in that mud of, do we have something that's consistent and competing, right? Like, as coaches, we look at it just competing. So for the coaches on the Bears, that's what they're going to look for: is, are we competing? Are we doing things the right way? Are we acting the right way? And then the pieces, they can get into place, free agency, in the draft. When the season's over, they really get it. Like, so those type of things, I still think we have to take a step back. If we're seeing that on the field, if we're seeing all that, I I'd be mad. But if I'm seeing that and we win 6, 7 games, a part of me would still be like, okay, I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
More than what we more than what we saw with, like, Matt Eberflus
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. Because in the NFL, they can still build that culture because players just can't leave every year. Like, they're on contract. You have a lot of guys that come back, but that's what I want to see in those type of situations and those scenarios. Sorry, that's a long-winded coach answer, but that's what goes through my mind.
No, it's good. It's good. You add that side I cannot provide. So no, I completely understand. You know, it's a little bit different for objectives.
But I have to battle the fan and coach because the fan in me takes over a lot. Like, what the hell? We're supposed to win 9, like 10 games, and what the hell are they doing? But I think that's also because we saw incompetency in the coaching. So if we see competency in the coaching, I think that'll take a step back and be like, well, they're doing the right things. Now the players have to hold, because you're dealing with professionals. They got to hold up their end and go out there and perform. If they're, so that's kind of where best case scenario is competent coaching. That's going to be my first and foremost. Like, best case scenario, I want to see competency. I want to see things done the right way. I want to see them getting ready to play. And if we just lose because the other team is more talented, they made 1 or 2 more plays than we did, I have to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that they're right there, like, hey, they're right there to take it, and then the following year, that'd be the year you have to take it and show that you can be a team that competes for the playoffs in the NFC North just year in and year out.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've seen with the Lions the last couple of years. The Vikings do it year in and year out. Green Bay, of course, does it all the time. That's just what we need to see, is just competitiveness, competency, and just being in the conversation.
Yeah. I'll just take competency. Be nice to have for a change.
Well, hopefully this is the year. Well, that's all I had for the Bears right now. It gave me a couple ideas for other episodes as we episode titles.
Yeah. Well,
It's good.
it's the off season. Practices are coming up, training camps coming up. almost to that stretch where the NFL's football lull will be over and we're back into the cycle. You know, in the meantime, I got racing and I got Canadian football I can watch.
Yep, and I'm deeply versed in the college football world right now, because a lot of my guests are college football coaches. So I'm very
Well, I mean, that's around the corner too. You know, late August. It's not too far away.
and my Illini should be right there.
Yeah.
They
Oh yeah.
I have to do an episode here soon about my Illini. I have not had the time. You think I would have done it this week when I had a week off from all things coaching, but I'm a lazy content creator. I think that's what they're called. It's lazy. Well, let me ask the
No,
people this. Have you ever had plans like, hey, I am going to go do a podcast. I am going to go do this. But then you lay on the couch and you fall asleep for like 30 minutes and then you go, never mind.
it's
Like I
happened to me.
just,
That
well,
has happened to me.
I just want
Oh,
people to know I'm coming off of June where Monday through Thursday, Friday, I'm doing basketball and football. And 2 days or 3 days of that week, I'm gone from 7 a.m. to 9:15 p.m.
mm-hmm.
So the last thing on my mind is giving the people any sort of content. But the one content I want to do is this, like my middle finger and be like, F off. I'm not doing nothing.
All I gotta say is 3 words: work-life balance. That's important.
I just have
You
4
know.
letters. I'm LAZY a lot of the time. Well, that'll wrap up another part of Bear Down, part of the Coach Steve Show. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok. Clips get a lot of views there for some reason. Don't know why. Followers on that thing they're not like high, but every time I get on there, someone's followed you. Someone's followed you. I'm like, what the hell's going
It's
on?
great. No, it's great. Keep it going. Keep moving the numbers.
And always comment below. Like, even though I don't respond, I see them. Zach, I don't know about you. I get a lot of hate comments, and I don't know why.
I am not sure why you do, unless they just don't agree with your Bears takes or college takes. But that's the curse that's the curse that we're given as ones that create the shows. It's easier to comment on the stuff. It's harder to make the stuff.
This is how I'm going to end this. If anybody listens to this, if you watch this whole episode right now, this hour and 23 minutes, and you leave comments going after me, that's fine because you watched the whole thing, right? You got
Yep.
all the context of what we're doing. The clips are clips for a reason. They don't have the full context. So when people comment on the clips going after me, I don't have time to respond to them and say, go watch the full episode to understand what I was trying to say or what I said.
Hmm.
So when people comment on clips, like I put a clip out the other day about travel sports and what I'm dealing with. Oh, the comments on there I got from people are about you're a dumb football coach, you're only about football, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, don't you know that I coach 3 sports? So I'm obviously not about just the one. But they didn't watch the full episode. And it was with a college coach, mind you, Zach. It was with a college coach. So it's
Sure.
like, go watch the whole thing and understand what we were trying to say and see the conversation we were having. And then you can have your opinion. But that's just my opinion. So people, before you comment hatred, at least understand what's being said before you jump on there.
Yeah. Just gotta keep going, and hey, comments mean that they're checking your stuff out too. Just keep that in mind.
I guess. But they could subscribe and get those numbers up then. Come on.
Share it around. Show what you're saying.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching or listening. Me and Zach will see you on the next Bear Down.